In this video, we're out at Sonoma Creek Marsh, which is Audubon's restoration project at the San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge. And what Courtney Gutman was looking at here was a large group of migratory shorebirds. And the shorebirds are here because they're resting and they're feeding. They probably just arrived back from their breeding grounds in Alaska. It's a mixture of dunlin, western sandpipers, and least sandpipers most likely, and there's thousands upon thousands of birds. You can see some of what we're calling the marsh mounds and the transition zones that we've built into the marsh, and these provide high tide refugia for birds during high tide events and also sea level rise. Now you may wonder why these birds are wheeling around the marsh the way they are instead of settling down onto the ground. And that's because there's a northern harrier that's come in and it's looking to pick off one of these birds for its lunch. So I am looking for a clapper rail. Rachel told me she saw one out here last time she was here. You don't usually see them, you usually hear them, but I would love to see one. This area is one of the breeding areas for the California clapper rail, which is now called the Ridgway's rail.
The Ridgway's rail is an endangered species, and the California black rail is a rare and threatened species. Both of them really love this marshy habitat. They typically will use channeled areas in marsh habitat to both forage and to protect themselves and stay hidden. And one of the biggest threats to them is as soon as those channel areas fill with water with natural high tides, the black rails and the Ridgway rails have to go to higher elevations to seek habitat out of the water, and they often don't find areas that they can hide from predators. So they become really susceptible to being picked off when they have to get out of the high tide zones.
So Sonoma Creek is a centennial marsh, which means it was a marsh that was formed 100 years ago based on gold mining silt that came down the rivers and dumped a lot of sediment into the mouth of San Francisco Bay. And that built up with vegetation and created these tidal marshes, but the problem is they didn't create naturally, so they don't have channels, sinuing channels through them, which would allow the marsh to breathe and to drain. And so what happens now is during high tide events, water gets into the marsh and it can't get out because there are no channels to get it out. And once it gets in the marsh, it stays there. It becomes a place where you get a lot of mosquitoes breeding, and it causes a mosquito problem, and it also kills some marsh vegetation. So it basically makes a bunch of the marsh useless for wildlife. So our project is designed to put channels back into the marsh so it can drain and breathe, and the vegetation will regrow and allow these animals to fill in the spaces where they can't live right now.
So what you see behind me is one of our high tide refuge that we're building as part of this project. It's one of the three main aspects of the project that we really want to highlight because it's such a new advancement in terms of preparing for climate change. And what you see here is I am currently standing at about 6.5 elevation, maybe even a little lower than that. That's the base of the marsh, and we are currently building up these marsh mounds, and they're going to reach a maximum of 8.5 elevation. So that 2 feet is going to give refuge to animals when the tide comes up to our typical, our very normal 6.5 foot tide, comes up to king tides at 7 foot. And last year they even reported, the refuge reported a 9 foot tide here in our area. Welcome to the main aspect of the Sonoma Creek Enhancement Project. This is just under a mile long of channel that has been dug across the 300 acres that doesn't naturally drain. So this channel starts at the worst of the drainage problem in the center of the basin, and it heads out to the Sonoma Creek, where it actually opens up to the creek so that it has tidal fluctuation and normal flow in and out. And what you see behind me is really, really special. We actually have sandpipers, some of our little shorebirds, using this project area already. They're using the banks of the channel that we've created, and they're foraging in it right now. And that was not habitat that was open and accessible to them before. Eventually this whole area is going to fill in naturally with pickleweed on the marsh basin, and then the channel is hopefully going to fill in with native spartina, cordgrass that grows at a little bit lower of an elevation.
This is just one of the most incredible sights we've seen at Sonoma Creek. It's literally the most shorebirds we've ever seen in the marsh, and it's so exciting to see them in our restoration project. And it's so exciting, in fact, that the construction workers all stopped what they were doing. Everyone basically froze to watch this event and see these thousands upon thousands of shorebirds wheeling through the air. And it's great to think about the migratory journey these birds have undertaken, that they've come all the way from Alaska and they're now settling in the Sonoma Creek marsh for the winter.
Thank you.